In this video, we're going to look at looping in MATLAB, both the while loop and the for loop. We'll start with the while loop, and I'm just going to start fresh and clear everything here. And I've got this program, my first MATLAB program. I'm just going to overwrite that and just give it a comment that this is a study of loops. Now, in the previous video, we looked at Boolean expressions, and so it makes sense to start with the while loop, being that the while loop takes a Boolean expression. It iterates while something is true. We're going to write a simple guess my number game. So we're going to say my number is like 42, and the idea is that we want to have the user input guesses until the number 42 is guessed. So we'll say input, or we'll say guess is equal to input. Please guess a number, right? And then we'll put while guess. You notice that while lights up in blue, so that's a keyword, just like it is in Python. Then we have to give it a Boolean expression. So while guess is not equal to my number. So remember that that not is the tilde here in MATLAB. So while guess is not equal to my number, and we do not need a colon here, and then I'm going to hit enter, and we actually do not need to indent, but we are going to indent for good programming practice, right? And then what are we going to do? We're going to say, well, if guess is greater than my number, right? If guess is greater than my number, and we're going to indent again, and remember we don't need a colon, then we're going to print, which is fprintf. Fprintf in MATLAB. We're going to say lower. The number is actually lower. Right. And then we're going to say else. So that must mean that the number is actually higher. Fprintf higher \n for a new line. All right, and then we're going to end the if statement. So we need that end, and notice the if, else, and end are all aligned with one another. Then at the end of this thing, we'll ask for another guess then. Input, please guess a number. All right. And then that should be it. And then we will end the while loop. Because indenting is optional, we have to tell MATLAB when we're ending the while loop. So this end is required, and it should align nicely with the while there. Then at the end of this thing, we will print fprintf. That is it. All right, then that is it. So let's check it out. Let's run it, test it out. Please guess a number. We'll say 50. And it says lower. Please guess a number. We'll say 30. Higher. Please guess a number. 40. Higher. Please guess a number. 45. Lower. I'll say 43. Lower. 42. That is it. And we should probably put a \n there. All right, so that gives you a good idea of how the while loop works. It's very similar to Python. Okay, there's just no colon that's needed. Indentation is optional but strongly encouraged. And then the while loop also needs an end there. Now, just to remind you that the while loop does not keep track of the number of iterations. Like, you have to do that yourself. Let's change this code to keep track of the number of guesses. All right, so let's do that. Number of guesses is equal to 1 right there in the code. So that's the initialization, because you've already guessed a number of guesses. And then over here, we're going to increment number of guesses. Okay, and MATLAB does not allow this plus equals stuff, that that sexy way of incrementing the number of guesses. So you have to actually type it out the long way. Number of guesses equals number of guesses plus 1, like that. So when number of guesses is 1, when it gets down to here, when we make our second guess, it'll take 1 plus 1 and make it 2. Then it'll come back up and it'll make 2 plus 1 and make it 3. And that's it. And so maybe at the end, we'll say that's it. And then we'll do f print f. It took you the following number of guesses, right? And then we'll do a \n there, and then we will display whenever we want to show the contents of a variable. We can hit display number of guesses. That should do it. All right, let's check that out. We'll save it and we'll run it. All right, please guess the number 50. Lower, please guess the number 40. Higher, how about 45? Lower, 43. Lower, 42. Bam. That's it. It took you the following number of guesses, 5. So is that true? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes. So this, again, this was demonstrating that you have to increase the counter if sometimes in a while loop, like if you want to keep track of the number of iterations. All right, now there's also our friend the for loop. So I'm just going to clear everything again, start fresh, and show you the syntax of the for loop. All right, so suppose we just wanted to write a simple program that says I can count to and then display all the numbers that it's counting to. Right. Well, so we'll use a for loop, and the syntax is like this: for, and then you give a variable name like I or something like that, for I, and we're not going to say in like we did in Python. We're going to say equals, and then we're going to give it a vector here like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like that. A vector or an array like this, a one-dimensional array. And so the idea is that it's going to set I equal to the first thing, then I equal to the second thing, and so on, all the way into the last one. Now we don't need a colon, and we don't need to indent, but we will. And then we'll say something like f print f I can count to, and then we'll close that, and then we'll display I, just to get a feeling of what's going on exactly in this loop. And then I'll end the for loop. So the end is required in MATLAB, and they should align with one another. And let's check this bad boy out. So I will Control S, run it, and there you have it. I can count to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And so you see how this statement, that's the key statement there, how that is affecting the loop. Now I'm gonna play around with that statement actually. First of all, it turns out there's a shorthand notation to do this, to go from 0 to 7 in steps of 1. What you can do is just say 0:7. That's the same thing. So I'll demonstrate that to you right now. Control S, run it, and so again 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on to 7. Notice that it does set I equals to 7, which is the last thing in the array. That's different than Python did for that with that range function in Python. Now I could step by twos. I could slice this thing by twos, like 0:2:7. I'll Control S and save that. And let me clear this. Okay. And so here we have it. I can count to 0, then it steps by 2, 2, 4, 6. It does not include 7 here because 7 does not fall on the pattern. But if I change it to 8 or 10, let's say, and let me clear that and run it. Now you see 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, right? So it's going to start at this thing and stop at this thing and go by twos. Now there doesn't have to be any rhyme or reason to this vector. Like I can say maybe a -3, then 3.14, then, or, that's pi. Let me use pi. Then maybe 10, maybe 1,000, right? And then maybe 0. Just any numbers in this vector, and the for loop will set I equal to -3, then the next one, then the next one, the next one. All right, so let's check that out, and I will CLC, clear the command window, run it, and there you have it. I can count to -3, and so on, right? And the idea is that, you would do something a little bit fancier in this for loop, something useful instead of just printing this stuff. But when you print something, then you can see what's exactly happening in your loop. So this gives you a flavor of all that good stuff, all the good details there of what's exactly happening in that for loop. All right, thank you very much.